Hi, this is Atiba Buchanan, and once again, I am recording to talk about my experience with dialysis. Today, we're going to talk about creating good dialysis outcomes, and this will be at least part one of two. It might even be a three-part series. But today, we're going to talk about fluid retention or fluid extraction from the retention. And we're going to talk about a couple of other things. I'm going to explain to you how that works and how to understand kilos to pounds and why that's important, especially as a dialysis patient, why you need to be able to understand that calculation. So let's just jump right into it. I've been on dialysis now for what will be 12 years this coming April. And it has been a rough experience, but it has been a blessed experience in that I'm still alive, and that very few people, I don't know if anyone has ever been able to look at me and tell that I'm on dialysis. They only know after I tell them. That said, I have been able, compared to most, live a very, very normal life. I work out. I'm very active. I'm very active with my children and my nephew and my family. And so, I've learned a few things over the past 12 years. And what I found is very few doctors, nurses, technicians, while they're all phenomenal people, unless someone has gone through it, they really just can't tell you how this really goes. And a lot of times they're not motivated to do so. They just really get you going and you figure it out and scrape your knees as you go along. I've done that to the nth degree. And I'm here to hopefully help somebody have a better outcome not just a good outcome, but an easier time getting to that good outcome that I had. That said, again, I attend Fresenius Medical Center for dialysis. I love them. They're great. I love my technician. I love my nurse. They're good people and they do a great job. But we kind of learn together, or I did learn through them. And I teach them too about how things are from the patient perspective, because again, they don't know, they're not the patient. So let's just get right into it. We're going to talk about end stage renal disease, ESRD. When you have kidney failure, that's what it's called, ESRD, end stage renal disease. Your kidneys help you urinate. It takes the fluids, it takes the impurities out of the food and the drinks that you have, and then helps you excrete them through waste and through urinating. Once you've been on dialysis long enough, and it's different for everybody else, but once you've had ESRD for a given period of time, you stop urinating. I haven't urinated in 6, 7 years, maybe longer. And I know that's a lot of information, but that, guys, don't freak out. That's the only thing that doesn't work. Everything else will still work just fine, but you won't urinate at some point. That said, dialysis is really critical for those patients because everything that you drink in between the days that you go to dialysis, and most people are on a 3-day schedule, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Everything that you drink in between those sessions stays in your body. So what happens is when you go to dialysis, you weigh yourself. That's the first thing that you do. And it's going to be weighed in kilos, not pounds. And that we'll get to the kilos in a minute. And then what that tells them is how much fluid you've gained from the last session. Because the last thing that you do during a dialysis session is weigh yourself when you're finished so that they can see how much fluid has actually been taken and removed from your body. So let's say you start your session you finished your last session, I should say, at 80 kilos even. And then you get back, that was on a Monday. And then Wednesday, you get there and you're 82 kilos. That means that you've gained 2 kilos between Monday and Wednesday. That's about 4.5 pounds of fluid. And so the technician's goal is to get you to what's called your dry weight. What is a dry weight? Yeah, get a pen and paper. I'm going to hit you with a lot of information. Your dry weight is the ideal weight that you will be at when all of the extra fluid is removed and your blood is returned to your body. That's your dry weight. And their goal as a technician is to get you to your dry weight. The reason that's important is that that goal can sometimes be combative with your body, causing you to have a bad dialysis outcome. We'll talk about that. So you left the last dialysis session at 80, you came back at 82, you've gained 2 kilos. Their goal is to remove the 2 kilos. So they're literally going to set the machine, because the machine, while it's cleaning your blood, is also going to remove excess fluid. So the purpose of the dialysis session is twofold: to clean the impurities from your blood that your kidneys doesn't clean because they don't work, and to remove any excess fluid that has been accumulated in your body because you don't urinate. That's the two-pronged goal. So technicians are going to be naturally more aggressive in that goal and achieving that goal. So here's what they're thinking. I'm telling you how a technician thinks. When you get to dialysis, you're having blood removed from an artery or a vein, pumped back. You have an artery and a vein. Blood comes out of one, gets cleaned into a filter, and goes back in through the other, right? And so in order for your blood to get back into your body, all of the blood, they have to flush you with saline at the end. And in their minds, they're going to give you about 500 cc's, about half a kilo worth of fluid, saline fluid, to get your blood back into your body. So going back to the 2 kilos you gained, in their minds, in order to remove that 2 kilos, assuming 80 is also your dry weight, they're going to have to remove 2.5 kilos of fluid, because there's a 2 kilos you gained and the half that they're going to have to give you at the end to wash back your blood. That's a very important calculation, because everybody doesn't work the same. I am a unique patient. If I pull 2 kilos, despite the half kilo of fluid or the 500 cc's of fluid that they give me to return my blood, I'm still going to be 2 kilos lighter when I get on that scale. So I don't need to pull 2.5. Most times that's going to be too much. And then I'm going to have some type of adverse effect. I'll give you an example. When I first started going to dialysis, right, I didn't know anything about kilos to pounds. And I went and they would say, "Hey, how much do you want to remove, Mr. Buchanan?" And I would say, "I don't know. Y'all the technicians, you tell me," right? And that's what they would do. They would go ahead and pull up this aggressive number. They'd look at what I gained and add that half or the 500 cc's into the calculation. And an hour and a half, 2 hours into the session, I'm beginning to feel some kind of way. Let's talk about some of my telltale symptoms that I had to learn the hard way. So if the machine is pulling too fast, in other words, if it's pulling more than your body can tolerate, and your cells in your body are becoming depleted of fluid at a rate that is unhealthy, then what's going to happen is you're going to have side effects. One of those side effects could be cramping. It is cramping like you've never felt. There was one day, and this was again when I didn't know anything. I didn't know any better. This one day I had cramped so bad. I was absolutely afraid to breathe. It was all over my body. And so they were pulling too much. It was too much fluid coming off. It was too aggressive. So what is the remedy for when that happens? They have to give you some saline. And the saline is the cure-all. It will stop the cramping, and they have to release it at a slow rate. So you got to deal with that cramp for a while because they don't want to put too much saline, because what happens with that? that defeats the entire purpose of the session because they're trying to get fluid off, not add fluid to you. So I know we're 10 minutes in. I'm trying to keep it to maybe 20 minutes or less. I'm doing my best to keep you guys informed and entertained. So just stick with me here. So now we're talking about the fluid retention and understanding kilos to pounds. So now, again, understanding how my body works, that if I pull two, I'm going to be 2 pounds, 2 kilos lighter, at least two. Funny thing is, sometimes I can pull a certain number, get the flush back, my blood flush back in with the 500 cc's, and I'm actually light. I actually pull more weight, get on the scale, and I pulled more weight than I took off. There have been plenty of times I've only taken off 1.5 kilos. I get on the scale and I'm 2 kilos lighter, despite having that fluid back. So understanding how my body works, then I can better guide my technicians as to how to pull fluid off and what's a good goal for me on that given day. So now I never let them determine for me what the kilos are. I'll give you one more story, because this is another thing that can happen that nobody will tell you can happen. There is this, many of us get into kidney failure because of hypertension or high blood pressure. That's how I got here. But there is a such thing as low blood pressure. I had no idea. And low blood pressure, the episode from it, sorry, I'm moving my table. My apologies. The episode from low blood pressure, it has a couple of symptoms. First thing is, at least for me, I'm only speaking for me. The first thing I noticed was I get anxiety. I get anxious. You're sitting in this recliner and you're watching television, usually with earbuds, or listening to music or whatever it is you like to do. And as I'm doing this, all of a sudden, I'm just very irritable. I don't like watching television. I don't want to hear anything. I can't get comfortable. And I'm feeling very anxious, inexplicably. I don't know why. And because I'm thinking of the first time this hit me when I didn't know what it was. And so the other sign is, and this is when things are really starting to go awry. By the time you get here, you're pretty much in trouble. You begin to sweat like you're running a mile in 80-degree weather. And so because you're not running and you're not in 80-degree weather, as a matter of fact, most dialysis centers are pretty cool. You're just sitting there, rested, and now all of a sudden, my head is soaked. By the time that happens, and I've got this anxiety attack happening, I'm calling a nurse because I don't know what's wrong. You're hooked up to the blood pressure monitor, and it takes it in given intervals, depending upon what you like. Most patients take their blood pressure every 30 minutes. I don't play that. I tell them, you set mine for 15. And yes, you can tell them how long to set your pressures for. There's 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and 30. Maybe there's an hour, but what's the point in just doing it once an hour? I do mine every 15 minutes, and I wouldn't be surprised if you could do it every 10. But every 15 minutes, I need to know what's going on. That said, they're going to come over and check your blood pressure. By the time I'm sweating and having this anxiety attack, by the time all that's happening, my blood pressure is usually something like, 80/50, 70/40. That's a thing. And it's the worst feeling in the world. I wouldn't wish it on my greatest enemy. It can go a step further if they don't rectify it or you don't understand the signs sooner. And then after the anxiety attack and the sweating and the difficult time breathing too, by the way, the shortness of breath, you will literally pass out. Happened to me. And so after I passed out, I figured, I might want to learn how this kilos to pounds things work. That's how that happened. And so I figured it out. You can Google it. There's a little diagram that comes up, kilos to pounds. 1 kilo is 2.2 pounds. There you go. So if you gained 2 kilos, it's like 4.5 pounds, right? Roughly. I'm just, just an estimate. It's close enough. And so understanding that, I understand now how to tell them to best help me. You have to be an active participant in your dialysis. You have to own it. I know every button on the machine. I know how to take my blood pressure myself. The technicians probably don't like to hear this, but I'm just telling the truth. If I feel funny, I'm taking my blood pressure. And then depending upon what it says will determine if I call somebody over. Sometimes it's a miscue and you think there's something wrong, you take your pressure and it's cool. Other times it's right what you think. And so it's like, oh, nurse, my blood pressure is blah, blah, blah. Can I get some help? Now, here's the other thing, too. There are settings on the machine to notify anyone of a problem if the blood pressure is too out of control. There really is no setting. There's almost no setting for how low it can go. I don't know what the trigger is for how low it can go before someone comes over. But I can tell you for high blood pressure, my machine is normally set for anything over 180 over 100. If my top number is either 180 or higher, the machine will beep red. If the diastolic, I think is on the bottom, is 100 or higher, yeah, it will beep red. And so you'll have that notification that'll let you know at least something's wrong. But I mean, by the time it gets to that point, trust me, you know something's wrong because you're feeling it. That said, I don't want to get too far off track because I want to still stay on this fluid retention thing. So you have to know how your body works. You have to understand kilos to pounds, and you have to be an active participant. Now, the thing too is you can make adjustments during your session. So there are days that I'll come in and I'll say, man, I gained 3 over the weekend, 3 kilos. Let's go ahead and try and take off 3.1. And then 2 hours into the session, I'm beginning to feel some kind of way. Maybe I feel like I'm getting a little anxious. Maybe I feel like I'm about to start sweating. One thing you can do then is slow down the pulling of the fluid. So I will call my technician over and say, hey, I was going for 3.1. I don't think I'm going to make that because my foot, it feels like it's about to cramp because that's another sign. And so instead of 3.1, can you change my goal now to 2.9? So now you're pulling less fluid. That slows down the rate of the pull, and that can help you begin to feel better and have a better outcome. And you have complete control over that. No one tells you that, but you do. So if you don't feel like pulling, and because nobody knows but you. The technicians know outlines, but they don't know how you feel. And you know what your body can tolerate. That's the whole thing, is that you have to figure out your body. I know my triggers. My body gives me very consistent warning signs when things are about to get awry. And I know what those signs are, and I listen to them. So that's important. That said, how can you limit your fluids? Let's talk about that. One, you can just limit them and watch how much you drink. I will say this. I'm not speaking as a doctor. I will say the times that I mostly drink water, I have an easier time pulling that fluid off and getting back to my dry weight. If I drink a lot of pop or a lot of juice, I'm going to have a harder time getting that fluid off because a lot of those calories in the pop and juice stick with you. So you think you can pull that fluid, but it's actually real weight that you've gained, especially when you're drinking pop and you got all that sugar. So as a kidney dialysis patient, the more water you drink, the better. I don't really drink alcohol. It's very rare. And now that I'm AFib, I don't drink it at all. I'm not even going to risk it because it could trigger my AFib. That said, alcohol, really should really be rare for dialysis patients. I mean, just think about it. When you drink a lot of alcohol, if you can't urinate that out, the alcohol is just there. So, Again, the hangover effect is way different. And I know this from experience because I've had a birthday or two that I got out of control. It is very unpleasant for dialysis patients, more so than the regular person, because you can't even urinate the alcohol out. So again, that should just kind of be a no-brainer. That said, if you drink a lot of water, you're going to have an easier dialysis session. And by a lot, I mean mostly water. I don't mean physically a lot. You shouldn't be drinking a lot of water. You want to gain as little weight as possible in between sessions, because the less the machine has to pull, the easier it is on your body. There are even can be complications for the heart. The heart can only take so much. So let's say you gain 6 kilos, you got 12 pounds of fluid on you. Your heart may not be able to tolerate pulling off 12 pounds of fluid in 3.5 hours. So that's what you're doing too. You're losing 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pounds. And I've done it. 10 pounds in 3.5 hours. That's how long my session is. It's a lot of stress on the heart. And so when they talk about dialysis patients having, more complications with their heart, that's where it comes from. That's why you have to be really careful about your blood pressure, really careful about your fluid retention, really careful about being able to drinking the right things. So you know what I do? I eat a lot of ice. I am an ice eater. I go to the gas station. It's 50 cents a cup at the average gas station. I get the biggest cup that I can, because even if you get the biggest cup and let all that ice melt, it's barely a third of the cup in actual water. And so that's how I satisfy my thirst without taking in a lot of fluid. I eat ice. A lot of kidney dialysis patients do. I would highly recommend you develop that habit. Now, what's another thing you can do to better your outcome as well during the session? Keep this in mind. Take yourself some ice water. What I found is, if I'm beginning to feel like I'm cramping, or if I'm beginning to feel a little anxious, especially, I got my ice water there or my Gatorade, I start taking sips. And you'll be surprised, the cooling, I don't know what it is about cold water, but it is cooling, and it just helps you. It helps me ease the anxiety, and it helps get my blood pressure back up. Because that's what's wrong, is that, again, you're depleting your body of the fluids on a cellular level. And so that's why you get complications. Again, I'm not speaking as a doctor. I'm just speaking from what I know. And so, again, bring water, bring ice water while you're at dialysis. That will help you, and sip it at your own discretion. Just a sip. You're trying to remove fluid, but it's there as a backup. And even just knowing that it's there, honestly, will help remove some of the anxiety. Dialysis is tough. The days that I had low blood pressure and I passed out, my blood pressure was 70/40, and I began to sweat, and my shirt is wet because I'm sweating, and they had to put an ice pack on my head. It is very, very difficult emotionally. And that's another thing that they do not tell you, because they don't know. When you go through an episode, because I'm going to tell you, I'm going to keep it real. Low blood pressure feels like death. You feel like you're going to die. And so you have this brush with death. And it happens, once a month or however so often it happens, until you learn how to manage it. It's difficult. I have left dialysis and cried. I've done that plenty of times. And I had to go straight to work, but I had to cry. I've done that where I was just passed out 30 minutes ago, and now I got to clock in because the world does not care that I was just passed out. So have someone to talk to. But that's another reason you want those episodes to happen as infrequently as possible, because it's difficult. It's really difficult to deal with that sometimes, especially when people don't understand, because they're not going through it. So it's a very elite club of people that get it. So, anyone watching this, feel free to send me a message, ask me a question. I don't know everything, but I know a lot. Again, I've been doing it almost 12 years, and whatever I can tell you, I will be happy to share if it helps your outcome be better. So I think that's it for this particular video. Please leave a comment. And thank you so much for your time. And I do hope that I was able to help someone today. My name again is Atiba Buchanan, and I hope that you are blessed.